Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to this week's The Rundown. Man, kind of talking about this past Sunday's message. And man, I've loved this series. It's been one of my favorites, honestly.
It's been a good series.
God with us, talking about His promises, so on and so forth. And this past week, we had the opportunity to talk about.
And it don't affect anyone. This one don't affect anyone.
No one.
No one.
Sure
No one struggles with this.
But we talked about temptation.
Oh man, there we go.
Temptation.
Gotta put the Oreos down. I'm so addicted. Actually, to the brownies, not Oreos. And L8. I can keep going. My sugar rush.
Do you like the other L8s or just like the regular?
Listen. Since we're on this topic here, they had a Diet L8. Hold up. I know if Adam Eldridge is watching this, he's freaking out right now over Diet L8. He's sweating. But it was made with like all natural sugar. Diet L8, and man, it was so good. And they pulled it off. Now they don't do it anymore. So I don't know. So if you work at L8, maybe you can work that out.
So they have.
It was Splenda. It had it with Splenda. Like Diet L8 was Splenda, and man, it was good.
What's the Diet L8 now?
I don't even know. Probably aspartame. I can't spell it, but I don't even know if I pronounce it right. I don't know.
Yeah, I like just the regular.
Temptation, though. I'm tempted, man. I go get one right now. Like,
one.
gosh.
But yeah, so talked about temptation, and so one thing that we hit on is it's not if you're going to be tempted. I know that that's something that's like, well, if I'm tempted, then I'll get ready kind of deal. But it's when you're tempted. So if you want to dive into that, like, man, what to expect with that, like whenever you are tempted?
Well, the good news, everyone is tempted. So you're not alone. So a lot of times people think, I'm the only one who goes through this. I'm the one who struggles with this. In fact, the Bible says even Jesus was tempted in every way, yet he did not sin.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when people get tempted, they automatically think that that's the sin part. So when the temptation comes, the thought comes, or whatever it may be, then the next thing you know, you're like, well, I feel dirty, guilty, bad. I'm not a Christian. I shouldn't have had that thought. Or where'd that come from?
Yeah.
So before you can even capture the thought, you already feel horrible, or that you even, why would you be tempted by something? I'm saved now. Why would I be tempted by that?
Yeah.
So first of all, just take a breather here. Like, we're all going to be tempted for the rest of your life. It's what do you do with it? How do you defeat temptation? So it is coming.
Yeah.
It's not, if, it's when, like you said.
For sure. And I know that it's one of those things that you do feel so alone so often. And the enemy wants to do that. He wants to plant lies in your head immediately that, oh man, you're wrong for even having this thought. You're wrong for even thinking this way. And before you know it, you're defeated before it's ever came. And it's just one of those things that you get down, and we know that it's going to happen. But also, where does it come from? Because it's one of those things you talked about a little bit, that between temptation and testing and really what defines that. So where does it come from?
So first of all, testing comes from the Lord. Temptation comes from the enemy. So God will never tempt you. Yeah. Like, you can't say, well, God's put me in this situation. He's just tempting me to see if I'm going to drink it again. Tempting me to see if I'm going to look at it again. Yeah. Tempt me if I'm going to say it again. God doesn't set you in scenarios to tempt you. James writes there, God tests you. If you pass the test and you persevere through the test, you're mature.
Yep.
He goes on and says, though, and this is the process, is you're tempted. If you're tempted, then therefore you sin. If you sin, it brings death.
Yeah.
For the wages of sin is death. And so James actually talks about the temptation that comes from within. So we have the world against us. We got the devil who wants to destroy us. But then we got a sinful nature.
Yeah.
And all of us have that. Paul talks about this dichotomy about the spirit waging war against the flesh. And as long as you stay alive, you're going to wage war against the flesh. So James talks about, we know the devil's after you.
Yeah.
But I'm my biggest enemy, like that flesh. And so he talks about, first it starts with the desire.
Yep.
Like most of all, well, not all your temptation is going to be something that you are desiring.
Yeah.
If you didn't have the desire, why would you be tempted?
Exactly.
So when the desire's there, and he walks on through the stage, and kind of have those 3 or 4 Ds there, but it starts with first a desire. And what happens is something that's a good thing, sugar, gets turned into a bad thing when you're tempted to eat a little bit too much. Right? And so what happens is there's a desire, and it could be a good desire, and then it's deceived. There's deception takes place. Like eating's a good desire, but you could become a glutton. Or sleeping is a natural desire, but then you could become a sluggard and become lazy. So you take these desires, and then the deception from the sinfulness begins to twist them.
Yep.
And then once the problem is, he used 2 words there. Remember, he used the hunting and he used the fishing, or I kind of got off on that little fishing term there. And I even said chartreuse. So what's a chartreuse? And basically what it is, it's a bait, and it tempts you, and you grab it. And once you grab it, you're hooked. Looks real, but it's fake.
Yeah.
You think the grass is greener on the other side, but then you walk into the trap and now you're hooked or you're snared and you can't get out of the trap. And so that's what happens. And that's what takes place. And so once we're enticed by that temptation, and then the third thing there, the process, because a lot of times we think sin's like just an event, but it's a process. How it works out, we act on it.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
sometimes, and I was thinking about this, I didn't say this on Sunday, but sometimes we even know it's fake.
Yeah.
And we know we're going to get hooked.
Yeah.
And we know we're going to get trapped. And we know it's a bait for us. And we do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I know whenever you're talking about fishing yesterday, it made me think about it. And I actually had this question this past year because I caught a fish.
Has Josh ever caught one yet?
He still has.
Is he still-
It's unreal. He's
Oh,
bought,
hey, Josh, have you caught one yet? He's over here behind the camera, by the way.
he's bought 7 new fishing poles
7?
and still
That's,
hasn't
and that's the number of completions. Perfect rods
That's what
and
he's
reel.
trying to do, and it's like, still can't get one. Nah, he's got some, and no keepers. No, he's got some. It's been fun. But with fishing, I remember like catching the same fish because there was a little bit of blood on it, and I could just remember, and I was like, why would it come after that again? But like you said, we do it so often in our own life that it's like, man, I know I shouldn't, but man, in our desires. And I love you talking about the sugar because I had this thought yesterday that it was like, oh man, there has to be some part where it's like our desire. Not everything is from the enemy. I mean, my wife grocery shops and she brings home Oreos. I'm not gonna say she's the enemy. I'm not saying the enemy brought the Oreos.
Never
in front
say
of me.
that.
Yeah.
Never say that.
I'm not saying that, but no, there's a desire that it's like, oh man, and how do I give up these desires? So good, but then also, like you just said, it's a slow fade. Remember that song by Casting Crowns?
Which one?
Slow fade.
No.
Oh man, I sang it all the time.
Slow fade?
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds like something I do when I cut my hair.
Oh, slow fade, skin fade.
I'm joking. Anyway.
But yeah, so it's something they talk about, but it's like with with the slow fade, it just happens over time, and we don't notice it. But what's your battle plan? How can you be battle ready? What's your plan whenever that does take place? And
Yeah, and so the first thing I said, there's one, find out what your weaknesses are. We all know our weakness. You know your weak time. You know, find out what time of day is, who you hanging around when it happens, what emotions are you feeling when it happens, who's, what usually are you watching or doing or a situation you're in that you give into that temptation. Some of you right now, you need to change your friends.
Yeah.
You already know that. Every time I get around them, I just, and you want to blame your friends, but it's not your friend's fault.
Yeah.
Or, hey, every time I go there, that happens. Well, you need to change where you go. So there's some things we can do to get in place. So you got to find out where's your weak spots. We all know them. Even the enemy knows them. Your flesh. So you know them. Then what are you going to do about it? How are you going to build a plan around it? Like if you're dating or single and you're thinking about like keeping yourself pure, you better build you a purity plan, and you better not wait till you're in the back seat somewhere at the lake going, what's my plan? What's my plan?
Exactly.
Like you have to have that plan in place. Or a temptation plan for some people, it might be a porn issue, maybe a drinking issue, maybe it's just, hey, I gossip about people issue. And like, hey, you're always talking, like, what's your plan on that's your biggest temptation? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one of those things that you talked about it as well. Man, surround yourself with people who love you, love God, love the local church, and have that core around you that, hey, whenever you are weak, that they're there to walk through it with you. Like we talked about in the very first question, the enemy wants to attack you, make you feel like you're alone. Well, one, you know that God's never going to leave you. He's never going to forsake you. But then whenever that comes there, you know, man, I have a group of people. I have my church, and I have my friends that are there for me. And that battle plan, man, it helps tremendously.
And that was the third point there. I said request for help. Ask the Lord for help, obviously, but people around you.
Exactly.
Like, who's going to hold you accountable? Who's going to say, hey, I struggle with this. I need you to hold me accountable. Help me with this.
Exactly.
And most people says, I don't have nobody I can share that with. That's because you have fake friends.
Yeah.
You have surface level friends. If
Yep.
you can't go to your boy or your girl and say, I'm struggling with this, as my friend, help me,
Yep.
then you probably need to find some new friends.
For sure. That's good. That's real good. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us this week on The Rundown. And hey, we just want to encourage you, dive into God's Word. Surround yourself with people who love you, love God, love the local church, and who are going to be there for you. Get your battle plan ready, because temptation, it's not if it's coming, It's when it's coming.
It's coming after you. 2021 is coming for you.
That's right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all on Sunday.